From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello, I'm Riley Lyons, and this is your news and sports update for 3 o'clock. The Vancouver Police Department has released a video of a Gucci store robbery that took place in December. A few months ago, the two men allegedly entered the luxury store on Thurlow and Alberni and made away with $20,000 in merchandise. In the video released by VPD, we can see the two alleged suspects in masks entering the store and using a spray on the security guard. The suspects later removed their masks and their faces were captured from a nearby security camera. The VPD has released the footage of these two suspects and are requesting for the public's help in locating them. Businesses in Vancouver are running low on their supply of paper bags. Movie theaters are struggling with the shortage of supply with limited amounts of popcorn bags. Reporter Maham Hashmi has more.
The most bags we have is like a couple hundred small bags, and we have less than 100 of everything else, which is very, very short.
A man who sustained injuries in a logging accident on the northern end of Vancouver Island 2 weeks ago has succumbed to his injuries in hospital. Lonnie Hiroka, a 46-year-old worker from Holbrook Dyson Logging, suffered from broken bones in his spine after an undisclosed workplace accident. His family had raised $7,000 for his condition while he was still alive in hospital. His family commented saying he will be missed by all who love him so much. He was a gentleman in a true sense of the word. Rest in peace, our beautiful angel. With more people than ever turning to alternative transportation methods, many are uncertain about the laws surrounding electric kick scooters. With more on the story, here's reporter Evan Tate.
BC's electric kick scooter pilot program allows e-scooters to be ridden in 6 Metro Vancouver municipalities. However, most riders are not aware that there's restrictions. Scott Favero, an avid rider of electric scooters, explains why most are unaware.
Why would you know, right? It's not well communicated by most sellers, right? If you go to Best Buy, the people there, not to their fault, they won't know, right? They're not going to be someone who does research before they get things, right?
Cities can sign up to become a pilot community, which allows e-scooters to be ridden on roads and pathways. Anyone caught riding an electric scooter in a non-adopting city is facing a fine of up to $3,000. Evan Tate, 1680, The Crow.
The Ottawa Police Chief Steve Bell says the Ottawa Biker Convoy will not be a repeat of the Winter Freedom Convoy. When the biker convoy is scheduled to arrive on Friday, Bell and the Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson say that they're better prepared to deal with convoy protesters. Bell started his council address by saying that the preparation for the biker convoy is all-consuming as they set up an exclusion zone. They also plan on having controlled intersections, no parking or stopping areas, and vehicle towing for Friday when bikers arrive. RBC Economics says that rising inflation will affect everyone, but especially low-income Canadians. Reporter Don Kelly has more.
Economists at the Royal Bank say a return of the Bank of Canada's key interest rate to 2% will hike average household debt payments by nearly $2,000 or 15% next year. But the debt service ratio of low-income Canadians will rise at twice the speed of high-income households through next year. RBC estimates lower-income Canadians will be more affected because they spend a much larger share of their earnings on consumer purchases and have a smaller cash cushion to deal with rising prices. Don Kelly, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
Russia has cut off natural gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria in an escalation of tensions with Europe over the war in Ukraine. Karen Shamus reports.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the move a provocation by the Kremlin.
But it comes as no surprise that the Kremlin uses fossil fuels to try to blackmail us.
Polish Environment Minister Anna Moskwa said Poland had prepared for this situation. From the first day of the war, we have been delivering this message that we are ready for full independence from Russia's fossil fuels. Although less prepared, Bulgarian Energy Minister Alexander Nikolov is hopeful Bulgaria will manage with EU support. Bulgaria hopes that alternative routes and supplies will also be secured at EU level. I'm Karen Shamas.
Spotify has reported an uptick in premium subscribers despite the recent Joe Rogan controversies. Reporter Jason Nathanson has more.
In the first quarter of 2022, there was a lot of talk about Joe Rogan's Spotify podcast. Neil Young and other artists had their music pulled from Spotify over what they say was COVID misinformation spread by Rogan. And hundreds of doctors signed a letter calling on Spotify to be more responsible. Boycott Spotify was a trending hashtag. But not only did people not boycott, they signed up. Paying Spotify subscribers grew by 15% over the first quarter of last year to a total of 182 million. Even though Spotify lost 1.5 million subscribers when it pulled out of Russia. Jason Nathanson, ABC News, Hollywood.
And now for sports news. Tonight we'll be seeing 3 games as we approach the Stanley Cup playoffs. We will see the Golden Knights face off against the Blackhawks at 5:30. The Phoenix Coyotes will be facing against the Dallas Stars at 5:30 as well. And the Kings will be taking on the Seattle Kraken at 7 o'clock tonight. The NBA playoffs continue. At 4:30, we'll see the Chicago Bulls facing off against the Bucks, where Milwaukee holds the series lead at 3-1. We're also going to be seeing the Golden State Warriors take on the Nuggets, where the Warriors are leading the series at 3-1. The Chicago Bulls and the Denver Nuggets both face elimination if they don't win their games tonight. More in the NBA, there are more fines being dished out by the NBA in relation to criticizing the NBA officials. This time, the $15,000 fine has been charged to the Phoenix Suns head coach Monty Williams, who publicly criticized the officiating of his Game 4. Williams noted the disparity in foul shots during the game, where New Orleans shot 42 while Phoenix shot 15. He continued to say that it's amazing to see when this happens in playoff basketball. The Raptors' star point guard, Fred VanVleet, still looks to be doubtful to play in tomorrow's Game 6 due to a strained hip flexor. The first-time All-Star sustained the injury in the first half of Game 4, ripping his jersey apart out of frustration as he left the court. VanVleet was questionable to start Game 5, but it was announced in the morning before the game that he would not be in the lineup. VanVleet said he hopes to play in the second round should the Raptors advance past the Sixers. And now for the weather. Later today, we'll see some continued sunshine with some cloud cover. We'll see some sunshine with spotted clouds for tomorrow and Thursday with highs of 15. We're also looking at some showers for the weekend continuing into next week as well, seeing highs of 14 all the way up till next Wednesday. I'm Riley Lyons, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Hey there, welcome to For the Record. I'm your host, Sadie Chung. You're listening to 1680 The Crow. Charmaine Brett Mills joins us today. Charmaine brings more than 20 years of experience in international humanitarian relief. She's the executive director of Veterinarians Without Borders Canada, which has just recently deployed Canadian vets to the Polish-Ukraine border to support the provision of animal health care to pets fleeing war action with their owners. Thanks for joining us today, Charmaine.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling me about what sparked the initiative in deploying vets to the Polish-Ukraine border?
Veterinarians Without Borders Canada is a member of VSF International, which is a network of 13 organizations that all have very similar mandate to serve animal welfare and animal health organizations internationally. Vets Without Borders Canada is a very unique organization because we not only work internationally, but we also have the opportunity to work in our own backyard in Northern Canada. And we've been doing so since 2019. We offer remote animal health clinics to communities who have requested it in the north. Internationally, we are working in South Sudan, Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, and in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And our programming there has really been backboned on a volunteer sending type model, where we've been offering technical animal health experts to our local partners and really helping them build their capacity. Our mission embodies One Health and localization. So really working through local partners to ensure we have a sustainable approach. In South Sudan, we've had a little bit more of an emergency type lens to our work as it's an ongoing emergency setting. Which has really helped us to be able to launch our programs in Ukraine for this current response efforts.
So what exactly do your response efforts consist of?
So as soon as the war began, we started to look at how we can support the situation on the ground, and really piggybacking on our expertise in localization, we began to search and find animal health organizations within the Ukraine and identify ones that were needing support and ones that were really becoming the backbone of the communities. I've been very impressed by the organization of the Ukrainian population and how they've quickly come to the table to support the animal health needs. We've been able to partner with some really key groups in country. One organization that I spoke with yesterday has had over 700 requests to support animal health centers, shelters, communities with their growing needs as the war continues. So our response is really looking at supporting these organizations so they can deliver food and medicine to the organizations, the shelters in need, as well as rebuilding. There's a little bit of rebuilding that they can do right now that is imperative for the animal health and safety. A lot of the shelters have been hit. So really having that core infrastructure developed so that they can continue operations. One thing that's really, just really hits home as something is that as the communities are fleeing, the one thing that is staying is the shelters because they can't flee with the animals. I was speaking to a lady who runs a shelter just outside of Kyiv, and she has now 700 animals, and she's taking care of the animals on the streets, and there's nobody around but her and her father, and they are doing everything they can to keep the animals alive and themselves, and it's heartbreaking.
Why do you think animals have become such a central focus for many in this war?
Yeah. Having worked in international humanitarian response for my whole career, I find it fascinating. I've responded in Congo, in South Sudan, in Haiti. This situation is completely different. If you were in Congo supporting in a conflict situation and you ask people what they would need, they'd say food, water, shelter, protection. If you ask people in the Ukraine what they need, they say food, water, shelter, protection, and my dog. I need safety for my dog. That human-animal bond is just something that is rising to the top in this conflict, and it is really bringing animals front and center.
Totally. As a dog owner myself, I could not imagine leaving my pet behind. What are you seeing from your partners in Ukraine?
So the local partners in Ukraine are really, they're exceptional at organizing right now. There's a group of 13 organizations that have come together, and they've created this really amazing platform and database where they're able to track real-time needs of the shelters within the whole country and then organize the logistics to get them supplies. Our one partner yesterday almost delivered supplies to 6,000 animals in Ukraine. So just really, it's an amazing logistical setup that they have. And they're getting all of the supplies through the border in Poland and then bringing it up in a warehouse in Lviv and then distributing throughout the country.
So that's in Ukraine. Now, what are you seeing on the border in Poland?
So we have deployed 2 Canadian veterinarians to assess the situation in Poland and try to identify any gaps. We've been to numerous refugee camps. We even set up a little animal health center in one. And it is astonishing how well the Polish government is doing. They have been so organized. They have really been able to do an exceptional job as animals come in. They're vaccinating, microchipping, and sending everybody on their way. So it's really a transitional setting. We're still assessing in the Medyka border area right now, and we haven't come clear what the needs are there. But what we've seen throughout a lot of the parts of Poland is that the government is doing an amazing job.
So you mentioned you've deployed 2 vets. I understand they are Rob and Elaine Clemenson. Can you tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, so Rob and Elaine they're amazing. They have done clinics with us in Northern Canada for a long time. They're a great team. They can work in a really remote rural setting and kind of hit the ground running. And they phoned me up and said they wanted to go and do this right after we said that we wanted to send somebody. So they really just dropped everything and were ready to hit the ground running. They haven't been practicing veterinary medicine in Poland. That wasn't the mission that they were set out to do. They're really just going and assessing and networking and finding out where are the gaps. And they're doing an exceptional job at doing that.
Were you surprised at all at how quickly they stood up to help? How did that make you feel?
So I was surprised how quickly they stood up, but what was more surprising is that I've had over 200 other veterinarians say that they will drop everything right now and leave. I've had veterinarians, the majority from Canada, but also from the States and from Europe. It's so heartwarming to see how the animal health sector has really come together in this time.
So the vets that are willing and eager to help as well, do you plan on deploying them too?
So right now we're assessing the need, and within the Polish sphere, we are not seeing a need for additional international veterinarians to go in. We're still looking to see if there's needs for us to be helping out in the Medyka border. This is a very quickly evolving situation. So it's hard to say what our international volunteer needs will be throughout the whole response. But as of right now, we're holding off on putting anybody else on the ground.
And going back to Rob and Elaine, have you heard back from them since? How's it going?
Yeah, I speak to them every half an hour, pretty much, I think. Yeah, they're doing great. They've really become a part of the community. They have a driver that they're using. They have a kind of a house that they're staying at, and the owner's really been helping them find their way. They've been going to the train stations, to the refugee camps, talking to the population. They've been doing a great job.
Good to hear. What kind of safety protocols do you have in place? Was there any fear of what things were going to be like over there?
Yeah, for sure. So in Helm, where they are right now, at the camp where they're staying just beside, there's 130 Polish military. So they have very up-to-date security information. We're also working with an organization called Safer Access, and they're based in Lviv. They're Canadian, and they are security consultants. So they're helping us to understand the situation on the border and the overall context of the war, as well as hopefully being able to support our local partners within the country.
So you recently launched an emergency fundraising campaign. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so our fundraising campaign is really about supporting the partners on the ground and our response efforts as things unfold with the war. And we've been utilizing those great dollars to support the partners directly in Ukraine to help the animal situation. So really providing food and medicine, as well as continue their operations as much as possible. And the funds that we have received and been able to deploy has been so well received by the partners. One partner, we sent just a small amount of money, $4,000. They went out within an hour and bought animal food and medicine and then emailed me the receipts for all of their pets. It's just amazing.
There's a lot of dog owners and pet owners here in Canada and BC as well. Do you find that because of that human-animal bond connection you mentioned, you are seeing more people who can relate and are more willing to support?
Absolutely. Putting yourself in the situation of somebody who's trying to flee with their dog. I know myself, I couldn't imagine my cat's right beside me, having to put her in my coat and try to flee with my children. And it just makes you want to do anything you can to help those people because they're in such an awful situation.
So where do you go from here? You mentioned things are constantly changing. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so I think that nobody can predict how the war is going to go from here. What parts of the country will be able to continue aid in, how many people will be fleeing, and how that will change at the border. So I think being able to understand how the network of logistics for supporting the shelters in country rolls out, and having that move in a sustainable way, as well as having a presence so that we can identify as needs change at the border areas and support them. There's been a lot of people who have fled, but there are a lot of people left in Ukraine, and making sure that we support them as they move through this awful situation is key.
And what has been the state of these pets? I can imagine they're quite frightened.
Yeah, so what they're seeing at the Polish border, it changes through the different entry posts, right? In Helm, the animals that have come through that they've seen they've been frightened, and like they haven't been to the bathroom in a long time. They're not seeing a lot of wounded animals. It's more animals that have just really been impacted by the trauma. Where they are now at the border crossing, I've heard that there's up to 30% animals coming through the people. So it'll be interesting to see what they say as far as the needs are there and the animals that are impacted, if they're injured or what the situation is.
Okay, so there are no implications about bringing pets across the border?
That's correct. Right now, pets are allowed to come across the border and transition from Poland as long as they're microchipped and vaccinated, and the Polish government is doing both.
Are there any other ways your organization might help other than with domestic pets?
I think one thing that I'm really trying to understand and identify moving forward is not just the domestic animals, but the farm animals. And I think that's something that hasn't really been touched upon in the response efforts. And I've been trying to reach out to our partners to get a better understanding of what has happened to all the farm animals and how are they doing now? Have they just been released? Are the farmers still there? It's much more difficult to connect with individuals in Ukraine versus the organizations. And it's those individual farmers that we really need to understand the status of and how they are surviving in the land.
And if that is the case, that these Ukrainian farmers do need help for their animals, where would you go from there?
Yeah, so that's a very similar type response program to what we have had in other countries. You're really looking at a food security livestock type programming, which we can definitely do and have done a lot in the past. The thing that is the caveat is the conflict and where it's moving. So you want to make sure that you are being as safe as possible, right? And understanding where the security issues are.
We don't have much time left, Charmaine. Is there anything else you'd like to add on behalf of Veterinarians Without Borders?
So I think from VWB's side, we just really want to say thank you to all of our supporters and to all of the people who have come to the table. There's been people saying they want to volunteer. There's been organizations sending medical supplies, medicine. There's been people who are saying they'll buy food, they'll send their points. It's just been amazing to see how many people want to help out this dire situation. And it really, in a time when things seem so awful, brings that beacon of light to show that humanity is really stepping up.
It certainly does. Well, thank you to my guest, Charmaine Brett Mills from Veterinarians Without Borders. That's all the time we have today on For the Record. I'm Sadie Chung. You're listening to 1680 The Crow. Take care and best of luck.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Santiago Matia is a world traveler. Born and raised in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, Santiago, or Santi as his friends call him, now calls Vancouver home, because Vancouver is where his artistic journey really began to take off.
I'd always wanted to do spray paint, and I was walking around some of the parts of downtown Vancouver, and I saw a couple stencil pieces of people who had just basically stamped it across the neighborhood, and that kind of gave me an idea that I was like, maybe I should try something like that. And as a kid, I'd always wanted to spray paint. I thought it was super cool. I thought the artwork that people did on the streets was awesome. A friend of mine also used to tag subway carts and stuff like that. So it all just kind of naturally felt like something I should try. And when I got into it, I just couldn't stop.
So Santi started out using the city as his canvas, but it was when he realized he wanted to keep his art, he turned his stencils to paper, and then wood.
I started doing stencil pieces back in the summer of 2021, and I first started on just small pieces of paper or cardboard, and eventually I started moving on to wood work. And since I grew up skateboarding and really admiring skateboard art, used boards and blank boards just seemed like a very natural way to go. And I had a few spares lying around, and that's how eventually I got into it.
For Santi, making art helps him focus. It brings him back down to earth, and it's a creative way for him to express his personality.
It's relaxing. I find that I'm at my most creative when I'm like in a very happy mood, and it kind of lets me hyper focus on something. So I struggle with a little bit of like sitting down and paying attention at one time, and I find that making art and doing the things that I really like with it kind of help me really hone in on it and really focus on what I'm doing. So it's extremely relaxing, and I always come out with like a really satisfied feeling once it's all said and done.
Most artists paint pictures of objects that make them feel. But for Santi, the subject of the piece isn't what's important.
The way that I really express myself through like the spray paint and the stencil work is through the colors that I choose. A lot of the fun comes in like the stencil is just the image of itself, and I think that if you really try to like express yourself, you can through the image. But personally, I always pick a pretty simple design, and the way that I really put my flavor into it is in the colors.
Spray paint art isn't restricted to bright colors, but they do make it easier to stand out, which Santi believes to be the whole point.
Especially with like monochrome, you can always start with a really dark base and then build onto it. But the thing about spray paint, and you'll even see it in people that tag the streets and then not necessarily do stencil, it's always very bright and bold because you want it to stand out. You don't want it to be subtle.
Art can be used for many different reasons, but for Santi, he uses it to keep a sense of focus in his life, express himself, and maybe most importantly, stand out.
It does splash quite a bit, and with it being hot, it hit my hand a few times before.
I'm cooking rice pudding. We call it kheer. Basically, the rice pudding has 2 or 3 ingredients. Milk. On this one, we pour about 10 gallons of milk. Rice and sugar, right?
So basically, everything here is giant sized.
So this is basically meant to serve the community who visits the Gurdwara, and for our own team, like for Guru Nanak Kitchen as well. We prepare for our weekly langar at the downtown east side. That's an estimated about 500 to 600 people. Well, it's a part of our religious culture, seva, what we call it. Seva basically means a voluntary, selfless service, right? So this concept of seva started about 550 years back with the founder of the Sikh religion, Sri Guru Nanak Sahib. In the Gurbani, there's a saying, Manus ki jaat sabe ek pehchanbo, which literally means consider all the humanity as one. When we are doing it, we really don't consider that is going to be a particular community or a sect or religion or race. No, never.
That's funny. I was just talking to him about wanting to do a documentary myself. So that's funny.
Right?
Yeah.
Hi. And what brings you guys out here?
I was just out here randomly doing an errand, and then I saw the awning and thought, why not stop for a meal? I've had it before, and so yeah.
Okay, cool.
And how about you? I've been broke for a month, and the food in my building is terrible. And I remembered I can actually come down here and get full, and so that's why I'm here. I'm gonna get like thirds if I can. And I think it's the best food you can get if you're a person without means, right?
Yeah, for being homeless, this is some of the best food that I had. I was homeless for 5 years, and by far it's some of the best food I've had and going anywhere to any of the kitchens in Victoria and Vancouver.
And how long have you guys known each other?
Today. We just met today.
Yeah, we met 10 minutes before you rolled up. Well, who knows?
Okay.
Maybe we'll become friends.
Yeah.
How did you like the food today?
It was good.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that bread. So I'm not sure what's going on there. So this badass stuff. This I could
the rice
I could
pudding,
do all
yeah.
day. Yeah, I could have about 20 of these.
It's so difficult to make the money for their drug habits that they're not capable of acquiring food for themselves at all.
It's way down the list.
It's way down the list on you.
No one wants to be homeless. This is the most positive thing out here. Like you got insight, but and there are dicks in there a lot. But like you guys, I've never had one.
To have the food there for them, it keeps their life. It sustains their life. It literally is like a necessary thing for them, and it's great because they would just whittle away and die without it probably.
And I'm glad it hasn't gone the way of. There was that church on what was it like just south of Broadway there, like a main-ish, remember? And there was huge lineups, but it was all like gold collar kids, right? Like they were they're there just to be hip.
Yeah.
And like I don't see that here. It's actually people that in need. So I'm glad that hasn't been taken over by a bunch of yuppies. Too scared to come down here, I guess.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello, I'm Riley Lyons, and this is your news and sports update for 3 o'clock. The Vancouver Police Department has released a video of a Gucci store robbery that took place in December. A few months ago, 2 men allegedly entered the luxury store on Thurlow and Alberni and made away with $20,000 in merchandise. In the video released by VPD, we can see the 2 alleged suspects in masks entering the store using a spray on the security guard. The suspects later removed their mask and their faces were captured from a nearby security camera. The VPD has released the footage of these 2 suspects and are requesting for the public's help in locating them. With more people than ever turning to alternative transportation methods, many are uncertain about the laws surrounding electric kick scooters. With more on the story, here's reporter Evan Tate.
BC's electric kick scooter pilot program allows e-scooters to be ridden in 6 Metro Vancouver municipalities. However, most riders are not aware that there's restrictions. Scott Favero, an avid rider of electric scooters, explains why most are unaware.
Why would you know, right? It's not well communicated by most sellers, right? If you go to Best Buy, the people there, not to their fault, they won't know, right? They're not going to be someone who does research before they get things, right?
Cities can sign up to become a pilot community, which allows e-scooters to be ridden on roads and pathways. Anyone caught riding an electric scooter in a non-adopting city is facing a fine of up to $3,000. Evan Tate, 1680, The Crow.
RBC Economics say that rising inflation will affect everyone, but especially low-income Canadians. Reporter Don Kelly has more.
Economists at the Royal Bank say a return of the Bank of Canada's key interest rate to 2% will hike average household debt payments by nearly $2,000, or 15% next year. But the debt service ratio of low-income Canadians will rise at twice the speed of high-income households through next year. RBC estimates lower-income Canadians will be more affected because they spend a much larger share of their earnings on consumer purchases and have a smaller cash cushion to deal with rising prices. Don Kelly, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
Spotify has reported an uptick in premium subscribers despite recent Joe Rogan controversies. Reporter Jason Nathanson has more.
In the first quarter of 2022, there was a lot of talk about Joe Rogan's Spotify podcast. Neil Young and other artists had their music pulled from Spotify over what they say was COVID misinformation spread by Rogan. And hundreds of doctors signed a letter calling on Spotify to be more responsible. Boycott Spotify was a trending hashtag. But not only did people not boycott, they signed up. Paying Spotify subscribers grew by 15% over the first quarter of last year to a total of 182 million. Even though Spotify lost 1.5 million subscribers when it pulled out of Russia. Jason Nathanson, ABC News, Hollywood.
Liverpool has managed to win against the Spanish Villarreal in the Championship League semi-final with a score of 2-0. Jordan Henderson and Sadio Mane were core players in victory for Liverpool, who each scored. Liverpool dominated the first half of the game, but were unable to break through the Villarreal defense. In the second half, though, Jordan Henderson was able to quickly score in the second half, with Sadio Mane scoring a second just 2 minutes later. The 2 teams faced for the second leg in Villarreal in Spain on May 3rd. The NBA playoffs continue tonight at 4:30, where we'll see the Chicago Bulls face off against the Bucks, where Milwaukee holds the series lead at 3-1. We are also seeing the Golden State Warriors take on the Nuggets, where the Warriors are leading the series 3-1. The Chicago Bulls and the Denver Nuggets both face elimination if they do not win their games tonight. Raptors star point guard Fred VanVleet still looks to be doubtful to play in tomorrow's Game 6 due to a strained hip flexor. The first-time All-Star sustained the injury in the first half of Game 4, ripping his jersey apart out of frustration as he left the court. VanVleet was questionable to start Game 5, but it was announced in the morning before the game that he would not be in the lineup. VanVleet said he hopes to play in the second round should the Raptors advance past the Sixers. Now for the weather. Later today, we'll see some continued sunshine with some cloud cover. We'll see some sunshine with spotted clouds for tomorrow and Thursday with highs of 15. We're looking at showers for the weekend, continuing into next week, as well as seeing highs of 14 into next Wednesday. I'm Riley Lyons, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.